Let me first and foremost say how delighted I am to join you today for this session, and once again to thank you for the very warm welcome that you have offered me and my delegation since we arrived here in your building, our building. Allow me also to congratulate the OACPS member states, our Secretary General, and indeed his team, on all the strides made to strengthen the OACPS's cooperation and the coming into force of the revised Georgetown Agreement. I believe this milestone achievement by member states illustrates our determination to cooperate together to tackle our challenges in achieving sustainable development, in pursuit of our common and shared values, as well as our aspirations, as reiterated by the Nairobi Nguvu ya Pamoja Declaration that was adopted at our 9th summit. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I know that this meeting is taking place against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, and indeed, as the Chair has told us, this is the first time that you are having a physical meeting since last year. The COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to wreak havoc around the world with millions of lives lost and indeed entire economies and livelihoods wrecked. But despite this, I would say that we should not be deterred from our UN 2030 Development Agenda commitments, which we are currently in the 6th year of implementation. And most of us have a lot of catching up to do. We also know that even before the COVID-19 pandemic, many states were off track in meeting these goals, and therefore together we need to find ways to address the constraining factors and indeed fast-track our efforts towards this important goal. You may recall that in June of last year, during the extraordinary intersessional summit of OACPS heads of state and government, we did deliberate on the effects and consequences of COVID-19 pandemic to the members and regions of the OACPS, and we paid particular attention to identifying opportunities for global solidarity and action. The overwhelming message arising out of that summit was the reaffirmation of the unity and solidarity of all the member states and our development partners as we continue to battle the pandemic. Our resolve, we agreed, must remain strong. I also note that there is need for a follow-up summit which should focus on the post-COVID-19 recovery strategy to tackle the effects of the pandemic and reposition our countries towards the path for sustainable social economic development. The focus of this follow-up summit should be on the need to ensure that OACPS member states are offered enhanced support to enable them access vaccines and the various vaccine facilities, including the COVAX collaboration. We also need to enhance the collaboration with all relevant international agencies that are critical to ensure that vaccines get to all our regions, especially the most vulnerable small island developing states, and that there is also equitable inter-country distribution of these vaccines. We need to continue to strengthen our political commitments to the EU-OACPS states partnership by making political interactions more frequent with our partners. We know that the political pillar of the OACPS-EU relations provide for a joint parliamentary assembly to fulfill three main roles: The first, which is advocating the empowerment of ACP national parliaments. The second, promoting democracy and human rights. And thirdly, the monitoring of the implementation of the Cotonou Agreement. However, joint parliamentary assemblies lack sufficient technical capacity and legislative powers to fulfill this mandate. We are also concerned that the EU side does not always engage the OACPS ministers at a sufficiently high level to allow for conclusive decisions. The revised Cotonou Agreement maintains that the scope of groups' engagement with the EU to include conflict prevention and good governance under political dialogue. However, the unilateral application of measures, including sanctions by the EU, indeed as imposed on Burundi, has created sensitivities and concerns within our group. I have equally noted that the Committee of Ambassadors is continuing with consultations and diplomatic engagements with relevant EU institutions regarding the issue of blacklisting of OACPS countries with strategic deficiencies in anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism regimes. However, despite the high-level intervention, including by my office, the list was still adopted by the EU in May of 2020. I share the concern of affected OACPS member states that the unilateral approach adopted by the EU is against the spirit of the post-Cotonou Partnership Agreement. I have raised our concerns with high-level EU interlocutors in our meetings, including with the presidents of the EU Council and the Commission, as well as the European Parliament. As we continue considering implementation modalities for the public institutions under the revised agreement, we need to keep these important issues in mind. Your Excellencies, I am pleased to note that culture is one of the priorities of this new OACPS-EU cooperation framework. The revised agreement recognizes the role of creative industries and cultural heritage in maintaining social cohesion, a source of creativity and innovation, and a driver also for economic development. I have also equally noted that the various initiatives, such as the ACP EU Culture Program, are encouraging entrepreneurship, innovation, and creating jobs, especially amongst our youthful population. However, it is equally important that the uniqueness of member states should play an integral role in the OACPS-EU future relations. There is paramount need to recognize and respect cultural diversity amongst the OACPS, the EU, and other development partners. The imperative is to ensure reciprocity in this approach and reject any attempts to impose foreign values that are not consistent with our values, singularly or collectively, thereby ensuring protection of the rich cultures of our member states. Your Excellencies, the world is witnessing a new cycle of geopolitical realities. An emerging multipolar world and global challenges such as COVID-19, biodiversity loss, and effects of climate change, which are all existential threats to OACPS members. Despite these challenges, however, we must continue to be advocates for multilateralism, promoters of global solidarity, and remain reliable, respected, and engaging partners on the global scene. In theory, the 27 EU member states and the 79 OACPS states represent a powerful force in multilateral processes. This has not been fully harnessed. We need to seize the opportunities presented by the COVID-19 to unleash the power of this powerful coalition. I note with appreciation that this Committee of Ambassadors is in the process of formulating a resolution supporting biodiversity for consideration by the Council of Ministers. We need to formulate other such interventions and activities for other national forums, such as the forthcoming 12th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization in November later this year, that will be in Geneva. Other forthcoming forums which we should take advantage of include the 15th Quadrennial Conference of the United Nations Trade and Development Conference that will be taking place in October this year in Barbados, the 15th session of the Conference of Parties to the UN Convention on Biodiversity to be in China in October of this year as well, and the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow that will be held in November of this year, as well as the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I do urge you, Your Excellency Secretary General, to continue according the much-needed support to assist Member States implement the outcome document, Nairobi Nguvu ya Pamoja, from the 9th OACPS Summit, which took place in December of 2019, and similar focus should also be on the support towards Member States towards the implementation of the revised Georgetown Agreement. Your Excellencies, I'd like now to turn a little of my attention to an issue that is close to my heart, and I'm sure to all of you, that of education. The current unique and extraordinary circumstances precipitated by the global COVID-19 pandemic have exacerbated inequalities in education due to learning disruptions arising from school closures and economic shocks. It is estimated that almost 1.2 billion students globally have had their education disrupted. The prevailing challenges that have threatened to erode the hard-won collective progress that the world had attained towards actualizing the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, with a target of engendering inclusive and equitable quality education for all children, particularly in developing countries. So, Your Excellencies, in a bid to address these challenges, the Global Partnership for Education is holding a 4th replenishment campaign which aims to raise at least $5 billion for the 2021 to 2025 cycle. This GPE is a multi-stakeholder funding platform that was established in 2002 to mobilize additional resources for education. The process will culminate in a high-level summit, which will be co-hosted by the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and I on the 28th and the 29th of July this year in London. In a bid to address these challenges, the Global Partnership for Education is holding a 4th replenishment, which, as I have said, seeks to raise approximately $5 billion. The process will culminate, and we hope, with your participation in us being able to achieve the target that we have set in order to ensure that our children do not miss out on their education. With this campaign, we intend to coalesce efforts to mobilize support from a wider range of bilateral and multilateral partners, private sector and private foundations. This campaign provides an opportunity to ensuring that education financing is mainstreamed and not sidelined in the ongoing global discourse on post-COVID-19 pandemic economic recovery strategies. While on the one hand, most of our OACPS may be dependent on partner and donor funding, the most important source of education funding in low-income countries is government revenue. In this vein, we are urging governments to commit to making significant and sustainable investments in education and commit to protecting and ring-fencing education budgets. And I wish to therefore request all our member states to join the GPE financing campaign, thereby pushing education up on their domestic priority agendas. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I wish to recall that Kenya assumed membership of the United Nations Security Council for the period 2021 to 2022. And in this regard, it would be important for our organization to identify issues that Kenya could articulate in this capacity. Kenya's membership to the Security Council is an opportunity for each and every one of us, and it is there to serve all our interests and our concerns. Finally, allow me to extend therefore a warm welcome to all of you to participate in the UN Oceans Conference that will be co-hosted by the governments of Kenya and Portugal in Lisbon in June of next year. The conference will mobilize, create, and drive solutions to realize goal number 14 of the SDGs by 2030. It will also propel much-needed science-based innovative solutions aimed at starting a new chapter of action on global oceans, which our people depend on for their livelihoods. I once again take this opportunity to thank, through you, Chair, your Committee of Ambassadors for giving me this opportunity to address you and continue to give you my pledge and commitment that we shall continue to work together to achieve the noble goals on which this organization is based.